Hi, my name is Professor Cordes, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is the welcome and introduction video for English 353 Children's Literature. I'm super excited about this course. Children's literature is one of my favorites. The genre is always fresh. It's always new. It's very whimsical, fantastical. And so this is always a fun course to go through because we get to see bits and pieces of all different types of children's literature. So, looking through our course, looking through the books that we're going to have, it's an opportunity for us to take away small chunks of a very large, wonderful literature canon. Okay. This video is just going to kind of guide you through some essential things that you'll need to know prior to the course. I wanted to introduce who I am as a teacher and offer you some reassurance as we venture into 8 weeks of an upper division literature course. So the first thing I want to bring our attention to is the syllabus. You can see the syllabus here. It's in our class, it's in our Blackboard course. As you go through the syllabus, it's outlined pretty specifically. We are an online learning platform. OPS is designed for you to go at your own pace throughout the week. So as you look through the calendar, as you look through this, you can begin to manage your time. You can begin to kind of piece things together for what works best for you. Okay. My information is right here. The best form of communication is my email. I will respond back to you in 24 hours. If I don't respond to you in 24 hours, it probably means I did not get your email in the first place. But that's the best form of communication. So if you send an email out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, wait until 4 o'clock the next day in order to respond and get some feedback. I'm always checking email. I'm always here to help you and be in communication. And that's the best form of communication. Office hours and video conference are upon request. So if we need to sit and walk through something together, we can do that. Whether that's in person or video conference, up to you. We'll kind of make that decision as we progress through the course and what the items are. But again, I'm here to work with you, not against you. I love to see my students thrive and to be creative and analytical when it comes to literature. So I'm pretty excited about this. I do want to bring your attention to the textbooks and the resources. We are studying a lot of different types of children's literature, everywhere from beginning books to adolescence literature. And so there's a wide range. We've got poetry, beginning books, picture books. There's a lot. If you look through all of this, this may seem overwhelming as far as purchasing, as well as oh my goodness, that's a lot of books. Yes, it is a lot of books. You are able to click on this link here and go to the CBU bookstore. That's an option for you. You're also welcome to use the ISBN numbers and the information here to get your books online and other resources as you see fit. So I know that sometimes Amazon has used copies. I know sometimes if you do things electronically, you're able to get electronic copies of the book. I've known students in the past who will go to local libraries, call around local libraries and see if they have some of these books and simply borrow them for the week or 2 weeks that they need them. So there's lots of different options as far as the textbooks. All of them are listed in the various learning activities throughout the weeks. So some books you'll need sooner than others. Take a moment to go through all of that and see. There's great selections. Our primary text, the children's literature, a short introduction, that's going to be our textbook, which does a phenomenal job of kind of outlining and giving us a good idea of the key components of the different types of children's literature. So like the chapter on fantasy does a fantastic job of looking at fantasy literature and the components of that. When we look at cultural components, there's a great chapter on that. It just does a fantastic job of kind of breaking everything down. That will be an essential book that you will need. Okay. In the syllabus, we've got objectives. We've got the things that you guys care about, the assignments. Each of the assignments are outlined, and as you look through the syllabus, it can get rather overwhelming. So my goal, my my hope for you is to kind of look through these different things, take a moment and breathe, and then step back, because we're going to do one thing at a time. Okay. That's my job, is to help you go through one thing at a time, one assignment at a time. So even though you'll look at this and be like, oh my gosh, this is outrageous. These are so many things. We're going to do one thing at a time. So you can see the grade breakdown here and what that looks like. Of course, this is all over 8 weeks. Okay. Standard grading scale. And then we have the course calendar. So the way that the course calendar is outlined is you've got the tasks that you need to cover, and then when they are due. This right here, you have to understand that our week starts on a Monday and ends on Sunday. So Monday is day 1, Tuesday is day 2, Wednesday is day 3. So you can kind of begin to manage your time. And we've tried to help you in a small capacity, because some things will be due on certain days. So like for the first week, your goal will be to watch and review the lectures that I post by day 3. Okay. By day 7, you need to get these other components finished, right? As we progress through, there'll be things that are due on day 3, day 5. All of them are kind of written out for you so that you can help manage your time well. All right. There's expectations, being professional. We are looking at working online. So this means, like, it's called netiquette. Being able to communicate back and forth. Obviously, academic honesty is a big component. Late assignments, because we work at an 8-week pace, we go rather quickly. And so if you get behind on 1 week or 2 weeks, you really begin to fall behind on everything else, and the quality of work is lowered. And so our goal is to not turn in late assignments. It's not acceptable after the course, obviously, because the course is done, and I can't accept anything. That's a university policy. If for whatever reason something happens, like, I understand life happens, I understand that things are going on in the world. If something comes up, please email me immediately so that we can talk through the circumstance, so that we can talk about what's actually going on. So, hey, my car broke down. I didn't get to work this day. I've got to make up the hours. Can I have an extra 12 hours to turn in this assignment? Sure. Great. Let's talk. Hey, Professor Cordes, my kid is really sick. I haven't had a chance to read this book and write the reflection. Can I get an extra? Sure. We're going to talk about those things, and I want to be flexible with you. I can't get to the point where it's, hey, I haven't done any work for 2 weeks because I forgot. Like, this, we're in a college course, so we need to make sure that we are on top of our assignments, that we're doing our best. There's always give and take. However, I do want us to stay on task as much as possible. Okay. So at your leisure, take a moment to kind of go through the syllabus and review all of that. Kind of go through, make sure that you've got those textbooks set up. Once you are done going through the syllabus, you are going to be going over to, when you click on the learning activities right here, you'll start by doing a student responsibility agreement. These are certain things that you need to be aware about, as far as like due dates, academic honesty, like just different components of the course. You probably have done this before for other online professional studies courses. So this is not anything abstract for you, but it is just for us to be all on the same page as we move forward into the learning. Okay. So please take a moment to make sure that you get that student responsibility agreement completed. After that, you'll notice over here, if you click on learning activities will take you to all of the different weeks. So if you go in and you click on one of the weeks, this right here is week 1. Okay. So week 1, it starts with the overview. It's going to give you an overview, and you kind of click through them as you go. Like what it looks like. There's the assignments that you're doing. There's the reading and the lecture components. I'll take a moment to put in my lecture right here once it's finished. There's a reading quiz. There's the paper. Like, everything is outlined in detail for you. OPS does a fantastic job of outlining specifically what's required. Always go to the syllabus, go to the assignment, and read through those instructions, because they will give you the information. So if you're worried or confused, maybe if it's something that I contradict, when explaining, because my brain is rattling all over the place and I can't multitask very well, and I say something that's contradictory to here, let's talk about it. Let's go through and say, because this is what we're following. So you can see that, again, that they're outlining everything. There's a rubric for you to see. And even at the bottom, there's a looking ahead component where we identify what's coming up. What do we need to prepare for as we go through the course? So 8 weeks goes by super fast. Like, we think about it and it's going to fly really, really quickly. So the looking ahead at the very bottom always kind of, it gives us a heads up as far as, all right, we need to prepare for this. We're going to do this small task now so we can go to here. So these components, and I'll explain all of them throughout the weekly lectures, but it's really designed, it's outlined very nice for you so that you can see everything. I would also recommend, ladies and gentlemen, going to, on your Blackboard, going to your grade book and always checking your grade book. I always want you to worry about your grade before you get it so that you are able to kind of move forward successfully. There may be a mistake. I may have punched in the numbers incorrectly. Something may not have loaded. Just as I am checking my email all the time, I would love for you guys to check your email all the time, check your grade book all the time. I don't want us to get to week 8 and you say, hey, what happened to week 2? I thought I turned that in, and us going back and forth when we're on a timeline that's designed by CBU for us to be done and then move on. So worry about your grade before you get it. Always take some time to kind of go through week by week and look at what's assigned and what's designed for you. The other thing to realize is that our course, and I'm going to go over here, my screen's going to look a little bit different than yours. Go over to learning activities, and you go week by week. So week 1, we're going to talk about fairy tales and fables. Week 2, we're talking about the adaptation and almost the kind of evolutionary mythology of Cinderella. We're looking at civil rights components as far as the Watsons go to Birmingham. I love that story. There's Inside Out and Back Again in children's poetry. So we're going to look at children's poetry and what that means as far as teaching and components of teaching, because obviously we're dealing with children. We're looking at images 1 week, which is fantastic because they're undoubtedly associated together, the images. We've got narrative perspectives. This is kind of more of a casual, personal, psychological approach to children's literature. We're looking at Esperanza Rising. We're looking at the cultural diversity that's presented for children's literature, letting there be a representation of each child within literature. And then we're looking at The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Christian themes, kind of the allegorical sense of life and what that looks like for a child. So everything is really designed for us to get small bits and pieces. I mean, we could take a course, an 8-week course just on fairy tales alone. And so our goal is to kind of pick small pieces so that we fully understand what's going on. Now, when we study children's literature, you have to understand that children's literature is huge, right? There's so many things that correspond with children's literature. However, you cannot study children's literature unless you understand the child. Okay, you cannot have one without the other. If we didn't take into consideration the child, you just have literature. And children's literature is really designed differently than anything else. Okay, the reader is purposefully taken into account. The child's human development, psychological development, the components of each capacity. So whether that's fantasy, folktale, like realistic narratives, historical documents, poetry, beginning reading books, all of those things are taken into consideration. And so the book is crafted very, very purposefully. And we have to understand that. One of the things, though, I will do, and I should apologize for this now, is that you and I, as the adults, the educated, the person who has experienced life, is going to view things differently than the child. So with that being said, like we have a handicap. We are going into children's literature with all of our preconceived notions, with the lessons that we have learned, with the kind of these ideals and values, and more. Like we are the adult, and we are coming into these books and these stories with ideas and thoughts that are our own. For the child, they come in with this fresh, new, optimistic, innocent perspective that helps them absorb things differently. So as an example, let's see here. I've got my books up over here on my bookshelf. If we look at James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl for a second. In the very opening chapters, James's parents are eaten by a rhinoceros. And us as the adult, we're like, oh, this is tragic. That's a very horrible, cruel thing to happen, and very instantaneously. And he goes off to live with his horrible, physical and abusive aunt and uncle. Or excuse me, his two aunts, not his aunt and uncle, just his two aunts. And the thing is when we read this as an adult, we're like, oh, this is dark. This is kind of sinister. This is not okay. For the child, they're reading something different. They're reading about a kid who has the opportunity to overcome obstacles. They're reading about the comical humor of being eaten by a rhinoceros. They're reading about the opposing features of good and bad. So they come in with a brand new perspective that just offers us just this fantastic approach to a story. Okay. My son goes through and reads like crazy. And one of his favorite books is the Percy Jackson series, The Lightning Thief, all of these books, and he's read them several times through. These are great reads, but as he reads them, he gets a different perspective and is able to explain things from the child's point of view. So for me, as an educated adult, I took comparative mythology in graduate school, and I know all of these things, and I read through this and I'm like, oh yeah, this is very, and I have the adult perspective. But for a child, they're coming at it with whimsy and magic and the fantastical journey that is that is the story itself. So understand that there are components to children's literature that we must bring in and understand with the child. Okay. I've always loved this. For me, myself, my very first book that I ever remember staying up late with a flashlight underneath, the covers past my bedtime was The Magic of Oz. The Magic of Oz was, and I had read Wizard of Oz and Ozma of Oz and Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. And so I've gone through the series. Like, it was a very fantastic, it is a very fantastic series, but this was the very first book that I remember staying up late and reading. Like, the story just kind of I just got entranced and I kept reading because it just was so interesting and fun and adventurous, and I loved it. And it was it was something I knew from the Wizard of Oz films and from the other books that I had read, but this was the one where I was like, I can't put this down. I have to see what happens. And so this was really what caught my attention. And as I became an English major and then going on to study English in graduate school and wanting to be a teacher, it was the components of what is it in children's literature that kind of grabs us. What do all of these books do as far as grabbing us, grabbing our attention, engulfing us, bringing us in, evoking childhood memories, of things that we love, right? There's components of it that we really, really love. So I remember reading The Magic of Oz. I remember in the fifth grade, one summer, I took the witches with me to camp. I just sat there and I read through the witches in my sleeping bag at night while everyone else was talking and going to sleep, just because it was such a very dark story. And I really loved how Roald Dahl pieced things together to make witches different and to make witches kind of real. And it was interesting to me because then I would go out and I would imagine, who here at camp is a witch? And I would begin to kind of be engrossed in the book and put myself into the book. And again, there's something different. Like, children's literature is very fresh. And I use that because things are able to come in and things are able to go out. So it wasn't until like 1997 and the early 2000s when we had Harry Potter come into the children's literature canon and begin to expand, and everyone began to love it. And what is this? And the reading phenomenon that was Harry Potter. And so then that becomes a staple. It doesn't necessarily push things out. It just gives us an opportunity to evaluate. So what's a piece of literature that can come in that we can read and understand and say, yes, this is a valid piece of children's literature. We're going to keep it. Like, how do we go from like looking at The Secret Garden? What is in this tale versus Stuart Little? What is in Esperanza Rising? That is so unique and different, right? What is it about these books that we can come in and that tell different stories? So it's not necessarily about, looking right here at these images like Winnie the Pooh or Charlotte's Web or Little Women, but it's the idea of what can we bring into this conversation? What can we do to teach and educate our children? So, my background is in children's literature. I have a degree in English literature and pedagogy, which purposefully is designed to how do we teach children and children's literature well. My master's thesis was on a series of unfortunate events, as well as some other pieces of children's literature. I looked primarily at the narrator becoming a character outside of the story that he or she tells. And so, series of unfortunate events, you may know the film or the Netflix series. This was when the books were first released prior to the films, any film versions or TV versions. And it was, how does Lemony Snicket, the narrator, become a more interesting character than the ones that we're reading about? So that's kind of what I developed. And I really just love this idea of children's literature and looking at the components. And this for me was actually solidified. My very first year teaching, I was teaching 7th grade, and I always, as a teacher, I always have a book on my desk. Whatever book I'm currently reading at the time, I leave on my desk so that kids can see that I'm reading. So that, because the books will change, my bookmark moves, they'll be able to see. And so one day I had on my desk, I had Aragon. If you haven't read Aragon, Aragon is a great book about a boy who finds a dragon egg and kind of the adventures that ensue afterwards in the kingdom. It's in knights, and it's very fantastic. Oh, I love it. I love it. It's kind of in the same genre of Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, those kind of arthurial, pastoral type novels. I had Aragon on my desk, and this one kid came up. I'll never forget Billy. And he said, "Hey, Mr. Cordes, what is that book? That looks really cool." Because he saw the picture. He was really enthused. And I said, "Oh, I just picked it up the other day. It's Aragon. It's about a boy who finds a dragon egg." And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I haven't gotten too far in the book. I'm only like a couple chapters." Didn't provoke, didn't ask any questions. That was it. We got started with class and we carried on. The next day he comes in and he's like, "Hey, I passed you." I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "My mom took me to Target yesterday and I got Aragon, the book, and I've already read. You said you were only a couple chapters in. I've read, 5 or 6 chapters. I think I'm farther than you." And so we looked, and of course he was. And I was like, "All right, cool. I'll catch up to where you are tonight and let's talk about it tomorrow at lunch." And we did. By the end of the week, no prompting of my own, I was sitting with 13, 14, 7th grade boys talking about this book, right? They did this on their own, from their own word of mouth, from the own enthusiasm. They were in love with this book so much that it was able to propel them to have conversations, to engage, to talk about literature, to be entranced by something. And this is a pretty thick book. And I mean, not a lot of 7th graders will sit there and be like, "Oh, I want to read a 500-page book on their own." And so children's literature does this. It's very fresh. It's very new. It's very to the point where we can say, "Hey, here's this story. How does it impact our kids? What does it mean?" And then be able to analyze it and pull it apart. And the great thing is we get to enjoy it, right? All of the other literature canons are kind of set. You've got Shakespeare, Victorian era. There it is, right? We have this piece of literature here. Like it's all kind of set in stone, so to speak, and children's literature is fresh. It's new. It's to the point where we get to say, hey, there's this new piece of children's literature. Let's take a look at it and bring it into the canon and begin to analyze it for all of the different components. Okay. So I've gone on enough. That's enough of me. That's enough of my stories, my love for children's literature. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Email me, message me, and I can answer your questions. Take some time to go through the syllabus. Here we go. Children's literature. Hope you guys enjoy it.